Welcome to the Tuesday Night Live. Today, we're going to be talking about celebrity conspiracies. My hair I look like perfect for this topic right now. I don't know, I look a little crazy. But this is a topic that I am asked about almost every single day of my life. And, as someone who considers myself a conspiracy theorist, I understand... I'm knocking everything. I understand why everybody is interested in my take on these things. And I think we will go over some of the most popular conspiracy theories. I'll tell you which ones I lean towards believing and which ones I don't. Hello, everybody. Hi, guys. Hi, Ian. Hello, everybody. So, let's start off with some of my most popular ones that are not ones that I tend to lean towards. So let's start. This is going to be a fun little topic today. As we go on, I'll get more into how my opinion has shifted on a lot of these things. We will talk about the whole selling your soul thing. And that's something that, as you guys know, I've been a conspiracy theorist for over 10 years. And, I've gone through many stages with this information. So there's things that I once believed that now my beliefs have evolved on. So stay tuned for that. We're going to talk about the selling your soul thing, the adrenochrome stuff, all of that, reptilian stuff, all of those things, because it is a bit more nuanced than I had originally believed when I first learned about this information. So let's start. Oh, you found my ayahuasca channel you found my channel from the ayahuasca videos. Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so let's first start with the most popular conspiracy that is like the most mainstream celebrity conspiracy ever, which is Avril Lavigne. So there's a conspiracy that has been around for literally ever. Like it's literally been, I heard this before I was even heavy into conspiracies. I heard about this one. And so there's a belief that Avril Lavigne is actually a clone and that she was replaced by a clone. Some people say that the clone is her sister. I'm going to have to tell you my verdict on this one, guys. Bullshit for me. As someone who is a deep investigator, is very, obviously my name being MKUltra, has been very into the MKUltra stuff. I've gone through many deep dives of these things and the clone stuff. And there is clone information out there. Now, I'm not going to suggest the book to you guys because the book is it's so dark and detrimental, like it's not good for your mind. So I'm not going to name the book. Sorry if you're going to get upset about that. But because in the beginning of this book, in the opening, which explains MKUltra, explains the cloning thing, and this book is also from the 90s. This is not like coming from YouTube. This is what a lot of the old YouTube videos that got deleted, all of those old conspiracy videos, what they were based on was this book. And without giving too much information about it, in the introduction, in the foreword of this book, the author says that we need to treat our minds like a garden. Sometimes we're planting seeds. Sometimes we're waiting for things to grow and sprout. Sometimes we're harvesting. And sometimes it's just not the season. So when it comes to talking about MKUltra and celebrity conspiracies and the cloning situation, this book goes so dark and so crazy. Like I could read like 50 pages and then I need like a year before I can go back to this book. That's how dark it is. And so with that said, I think it's important to remember that sometimes when it comes to these conspiracies, thoughts, things like that, sometimes it's a time that we're planting more information. But sometimes the garden of our mind needs time. Seeds have been planted. They haven't sprouted yet. They need watering, they need sunlight, they need care, they need self-care. And then sometimes there's harvest where we're going to have, new ideas or new downloads or whatever. And so that's why I think it's, one of the reasons why I don't talk about this topic a lot. One is I think a lot of it has gone off the rails. Like I think the normies, the normal people getting into the conspiracies, ruined it. But I mean, that's just, you know, as someone, if you were always into alternative stuff, then when normal people start liking it, you know that it's done. So that's what happened with Conspiracies. So my verdict on the Avril Lavigne situation is absolutely not. Literally, I know maybe if you guys are watching from Canada, you might think that Avril Lavigne is a bigger star than she is. But I'm going to be honest with you. It's not clone worthy, in my opinion. A one-hit wonder? Like, clone any other one-hit wonder for no reason at all. I'm sorry. I was never into this poser stuff. Sorry. That said, verdict is, this is just a ridiculous conspiracy. And we're going to get into the Britney Spears stuff. But before we get into that, let's do another one that I'm asked about all the time. So this one is the conspiracy that JonBenét Ramsey did not die, that she grew up to become Katy Perry. You guys, please. The amount of people who have asked me about this in the comments, because a lot of you guys know probably that a lot of my initial TikTok success came from my deep dive investigation into the JonBenét Ramsey case. And so many people were like, yeah, but it's really Katy Perry. No. You guys, there's literally, like, sometimes when people say these dumb conspiracies, you know, there's autopsy photos, right? Like, there's literal photos of JonBenét Ramsey, a child, dead, with the pooling of blood, bruising on her, with, like, there's real photos. And yes, I know people think like photos could be faked or whatever, but, and of course they can. The energy from these photos, like, do you have no compassion? That is some of the things that I think when normies started to get into conspiracies, and I get it, the conspiracy theorists were not known for our compassion either sometimes, but this is nuts. Like, the lack of compassion when regular people started getting into conspiracies is bizarre to me. That you can look at a photo or know that there's photos that exist of this poor child here, autopsy photos of her after being murdered, to then make this weird, dumb conspiracy that she's Katy Perry. I mean, gosh, people really, like, don't you have your own kids? Like, I get that they look alike in these photos, but, like, how much do people really change when they grow too? It just makes no sense to me. Along the same note of the whole compassion thing, the Kate Middleton stuff. I don't know the first thing about the royal family. Like, do not tell me who is married to who. I don't know the difference between William and Henry. I only know Prince Andrew. Like, seriously, I don't know. So the whole Kate Middleton thing, I mean, I could not be less invested in any conspiracy. I thought it was hilarious. The type of people that were into that conspiracy are all the people who literally are anti-conspiracy and call people conspiracy theorists as an insult. We're now saying that this woman was, faking cancer? Get a grip. Oh, Aaliyah's on my list here. I have Aaliyah on my list. So we'll be getting more into that stuff as we go on. So these are kind of easy ones that I feel immediately know. We're going to start getting into some of the more complex stuff, which Henry. I don't know. I don't know which one is Henry. I just know about Andrew. Okay, now let's go to the queen of pop. Well, princess of pop, right? I don't have anything about Madonna on here because, but just before we get into Britney, we'll do a quick one on Madonna. I've always was a fan of Madonna. Like, that was literally my idol as a child. I literally watched her music videos as a child and was like, this is who I am. So I also have the same birthday as Madonna. So I always loved her. Now, as far as the Madonna stuff, her conspiracies are a little different, you know, because it was just a different culture at that time. So it wasn't this internet conspiracy culture. There was people who were conspiracy theorists, but it was just different. So I don't think there was as much at the time. However, when you look at those original Madonna videos, like which one is it? Is it Get Into the Groove? One of her first music videos where she's wearing like that studded leather jacket and on the back has the all-seeing eye, and I think it says like Illuminati on it or something. Very iconic. But that leads us into Miss Britney Spears. Now, once again, I think that the normies lack compassion and understanding, and that's what led to this Britney situation getting to where it's at now. Now, I have a video here on my YouTube that is private from 2014, where I did a video talking about Amanda Bynes and Britney Spears. This was long before, obviously, TikTok, long before I was doing content or anything. I was so deep into this and I needed people to know what I had found. So this whole Free Britney thing, I was on the Britney stuff a long time ago. And in some ways, the Free Britney movement was amazing because it really did get the message out there, and it really did lead to her being able to come forward and knowing that people were supporting her, and she couldn't reach the outside world. And when you read Britney's book, she talks about how she found out about the Free Britney movement was when she was in that facility that they kept her in. So if you guys know, her dad is her conservator, which means that he was in full control, him plus other people. And then it was moved to other people when he was deemed completely unfit to do it, because he was the one that was dealing with more mental health and more addiction problems than everything they had claimed Britney was dealing with. And with that, this conservatorship, she was then, when her caretaker, her father, who was not a caretaker at all, when he went to rehab for drugs in, I don't know, a few years ago, right before the Free Britney movement really kicked off. While her conservator was in the hospital, they took Britney against her will and put her in this facility for like 6 months. This is what she talked about in front of the judge, where she said they were taking gallons of her blood. I don't know exactly what that meant. And then she also talked about how she was there against her will and that she was being given lithium all day long. And while she was at that facility, she talks about this in her book, that is how she found out about the Free Britney movement, that one of the nurses pulled her aside and said, hey, do you know what's going on? That people are talking about you. And she had no idea because she had no contact with the outside world. Like, Britney was not even allowed to have a private phone with social media on it for years. And so when she was at this facility, one of the nurses said, hey, like, I know I'm not supposed to be showing you this, but this is what's happening. This is the, what's happening out there, this Free Britney movement. And she says that it was almost like a spiritual experience for her, that she realized that like this connection that she has to her fans, was going to be, oh, it's Harry, not Henry. Oh, that's hilarious. Prince Henry sounds way better, but it's Harry. Okay. So basically, that's how Britney ended up. Now, side note from the conspiracy stuff, one of my weird theories about Britney is the first time I read Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marciniak. It's a channeled message by Pleiadians. And basically, they were talking about how there's some very influential celebrities that are Pleiadian starseeds, and that basically their soul is on this bigger collective mission. And I do personally feel that Britney has a greater collective mission for humanity, like her. And whether she's fully free or whatever, are any of us fully free? These are all things up for debate. However, this enslavement of this woman who has brought in millions and millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. This money is gone. Like, who has taken it? We know. And so all of this, the thing with Britney is I really feel that this is like part of a bigger collective thing, because Britney coming out of, and all of this stuff coming to the surface, which is why I'm talking about it now, because I really don't usually like to talk about these topics, and we'll get into that because I don't think that a lot of this stuff is that constructive. However, since everybody is chiming in on it, and we talked about this before in other lives, where some people feel like as you wake up to these things, because we have a perception of the world, we think that this is America's sweetheart. We've got all of these like celebrities that are seemingly nice people, and then all of a sudden these things start coming to the surface. The Diddy stuff coming to the surface, Harvey Weinstein, this is like blowing the lid on film industry, music industry, the Quiet on Set documentary, all of this stuff coming out. As someone who's been into conspiracies for a long time, when we would hear messages like this, like 10 years ago, where people would be like, it's all going to come to light, everything's going to come to the surface. You're like, how is this possible? How could all of this come to the surface when it would just seem so unbelievable? When you would just talk 10 years ago, if you talk to a regular person about the celebrity stuff, they would not even be able to resonate one bit. Now you look at the comment section of anything on any celebrity thing, and people are full blown about the reptilians, the adrenochrome, the taking advantage of children, the black magic, the rituals, the reptilians, the clones, the conspiracy, all of this. So it's really come to the mainstream narrative, which is why I do want to give my perspective. Is Britney a clone? Personally, I don't think so. There was a time when this, a long time ago, I thought that she might have been, because there was some weird art and weird stuff, like a weird music video where she kind of was telling the story about being cloned. However, I feel like the Britney being a clone is way less tragic than what we're actually seeing happen in front of our eyes. I don't think she's a clone. Now, to go back to some of the stuff that I have read about clones years ago, this is stuff from, like I said, from that book from the 90s. They talk about different types of cloning. I don't know 100% if the cloning stuff is true. I used to believe in the secret space program people talking about clones. I've talked about it before. I think all of the secret space program people are pathological liars, sociopaths now. I'm sorry. So a lot of those things, I don't know how I feel about now. Not that I don't know how I feel about aliens or something like that, but like these people claiming that they worked on these projects or that this technology is there, I think there's probably truth that there is cloning technology, because they already were cloning animals in the 90s publicly. You know, that was on the news, you know, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys remember growing up that they were cloning the sheep on the news, you know, so. And we always know that when technology comes to the public, that's like 40 years after it's been in secret programs and private programs, you know. And people want to act like the private programs aren't there, but it's obvious. The military industrial complex, the EPA, the environmental stuff, the DOJ, all of these things together, the bureaucracy working with the private corporations and then with Congress. This is the triangle of how all of these things can stay hidden and to be funded trillions of dollars. Now, with this clone stuff, my perception of it is that there's a couple of different things, that there's three kind of ways that there was allegedly clones. The first one is some type of biologically grown entity, maybe something similar to Westworld. And then there's also like a robot thing. Now, if this exists, I think it will be something more along the lines of Westworld, where you have biological robots, but they're AI. Like, so that, I don't know. I'm going to tell you, of all my research, I did believe in it, but at this point, I don't know if I do anymore. Now, the third type of clone, which I think is the actual most common, if there is any type of cloning happening. Oh yeah, Dolly, the sheep, is the one who got cloned. So with the most common type of thing, it is the third type of clone. If there's cloning happening, I believe that this would be the way. They're lookalikes. They're people who, and we know that there's lookalikes. There's so many people. Like if you scroll through Instagram, you see the girl that looks like Kylie Jenner, this girl that looks like this person, this one that looks like this person. You know, there's a lot of people. there is lookalikes that can look crazy similar. Allegedly, what it says in some of these things is that some of these clones might be lookalikes that have been severely brainwashed, that they actually do think that they're the person. Or maybe they don't think that they're the person and they just operate looking like the person sometimes. And I think you guys probably remember that in the 2016 election when Hillary Clinton was sick and she was like fainting and they put her into the car and her shoe fell off and they left her shoe behind and they just drove away without her shoe because she looked all sick. And then they saw her a couple times after that and she looked very different and had different mannerisms. And then, so what they say that people claim that that was a body double, and there could be a body doubling situation happening. Then there is also this concept that things like Joe Biden or something are possibly clones or a lookalike. Although I don't understand what is happening here. Why it looks like sometimes these people are wearing masks. I don't know why that looks like that. However, if it was a clone, don't you think they would update the software enough to speak a sentence clearly? If it was a body double, would it be so clumsy? And I mean, I feel like that's the thing with these clones. When people say Avril Lavigne is a clone, okay, well, why would they pick an artist that hasn't had a song in 30 years? You know, if anyone were to be cloned, Britney would be the perfect person to clone because actually she's a money-making machine. You know, they've used her as a cash cow for all this time. Now, let's get into, this connects to Amanda Bynes and then we'll go back. So this Amanda Bynes, I love Amanda Bynes. As you guys know, she was from All That, and she had, this is the thing that my video was about in 2014. The same guy who I just saw him commenting on a video, and I was like, oh my God, how weird is it? Just yesterday, I saw him commenting on the video, like in the comment section about like, oh, you're taking advantage of someone. Dude, you took advantage of Britney Spears and Amanda Bynes. Shut the fuck up, get out the comment section. So there's this guy, Sam Lufty, Osama Lufty. He is a menace when you do this digging and stuff. Now, a lot of this Britney information has come out and he's kind of like not really considered a big player in it. However, Amanda Bynes also went into a conservatorship after having a breakdown. Same thing we saw Britney had a breakdown, then went under a conservatorship. Amanda Bynes had a breakdown, went under conservatorship. The person who brought Britney to the facility was Sam Lufty. When Amanda Bynes was having her psychosis in like 2014 or whatever, she was tweeting back and forth with Sam Lufty. And Sam said, like, I can't wait to see you. And she's like, oh my God, like, I'm so excited. I'm coming to LA to see you. She goes to LA, meets him when she gets off the plane. And then he worked with her parents to involuntarily check her 5150 into the facility that then led to her being under the conservatorship. So what do I think about these people? The Sam Lufties and these people. Clearly they're handlers, right? The handler thing is real. I believe in the handler thing 100%. Because now this is a little crazy. We'll go back to my main thing. Then we'll come back here. So this is weird, but in about 2013, I met this guy who I started dating. He was, he said he was a hip hop producer. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. This guy was full of lies. He was definitely a con artist. So this was, you know, me with these secret space program people, getting to know them. I'm like, oh my God, I've literally dated a con artist. I know some of these tactics and some of this energy, this manipulation energy. So, and this is going to sound so weird. So this was 2013. I was super into the conspiracies and I was kind of on the border of insanity, you know, because this is what happens when your reality, a spiritual awakening or an awakening of any sort, but specifically a spiritual awakening is when your perception expands. So that could be, oh, we have a greater purpose. Oh, God is a true force of the universe. oh, they're lying to us all. This is one big corrupt game. You know, it depends. Anything that your expansion of consciousness could be is an awakening. And like we've talked about before, conspiracies are a form of awakening because your perception of the world changes, where all of a sudden we think that like, oh, okay, these are like celebrities and they're famous because they're talented and were born into the right families. And then you get like, oh my God, wait, are these people doing stuff to kids? Is this like some weird, like ritualistic, crazy magic or something? It expands your awareness, whether that's even fully true or not, you know, it expands your awareness. And that, you know, your reality kind of needs to be restructured. And when you're in that state, and this could happen on a spiritual way, you could have been an atheist and now you've had a near-death experience, a white light experience, and now your expansion of your perception has opened up so much that it takes time to adjust. And sometimes people can adjust easily, and sometimes people adjust a little bit in psychosis. Because then, especially when you're dealing with the conspiracy stuff, it's a lot easier. When your awakening is, wow, the love of God, the love of the universe, the greater purpose of it all, that's a little easier to integrate because the information's good. But then if you're like, oh my God, these people are harming kids, there's reptilian overlords, they're drinking adrenochrome, all this stuff, you get into all these conspiracies, your expansion has been brought to a darker perception. So sometimes where you were to where you're at, you're not grounded is what's happening. So with that said, that's the place I was in when I met this guy. And when you're very much in the conspiracy rabbit hole, sometimes, and I saw a meme about this, which is so funny. So there was like a meme, and it was so true because I've lived it, where it says, when you're not sure if the person you're dating is a handler or someone sent by the CIA or something, or you can't tell if this is a real experience or the person you're dating is a handler or a CIA agent here to derail your mission or something, like this is when I say, when you get into like a psychosis thing. And this is what I'm telling you, this is over 10 years ago now. So that's why I think I'm also a good person to talk about this from a grounded level, because I've been not grounded in this before as well. And when I met this guy, I swear to God, I did not know if this guy was supposed to be. I knew he was a handler. It was very obvious that he was a handler for other people. I didn't know if my relationship with him was for him to be my handler or to try to be my handler, which wasn't going to work, you know, or if this was a genuine experience and he just happened to be a handler of other people. And the reason I say this is because what's even crazier, and this is leading into some of the Diddy stuff. So a lot of these people that are being implicated in this Diddy lawsuit, especially some of the sex workers that are getting outed, which are, you know, they're saying they're not, whatever. That's up to them to whatever they want to share. One of those girls that's in those documents was literally a girl that he was helping with her career, and these other people too. I'm not going to name people because not all of them have been named. There are a lot of people who are married to rappers, married to athletes. A lot of these women that are big Instagram models. This guy that I was dating was literally a handler for these people. Now, at the time, I did not know that there was a potential that this could have been connected to some type of trafficking. I thought that, like, I didn't fully understand, but I was very into the conspiracy stuff. This guy pops into my life randomly one day. I went to Veggie Grill and I was ordering food. He was in front of me online. He asked me what he should get to eat. Well, he thought I was checking him out. Actually, outside the window, there was a homeless man being arrested and being put on a stretcher, and he was fighting the people on the stretcher. So I was looking out the window at this chaos, but he was standing here. So I guess he thought that I was like looking at him. And then he was like, oh, what should I order? I told him what to order. And then he's like, oh, I'll get yours too. And I was like, oh, no, that's fine. He's like, oh, please don't embarrass me. Let me get it for you. So then we sat down and had lunch together. And then this is how we started dating. But then this guy, and without giving too many details, is like 1 degree of separation from all of these people. And then I would think he was lying about it. I'm like, there's no way that he's connected to this person and all this stuff. But then other stuff would validate that this was true. And I tried to set up my friend with one of his friends because she was dating a guy that was just terrible. And so I was like, oh, this guy that I'm dating's friend is really nice. Why don't you talk to him? My friend hit it off with him. They were talking on the phone. And then she told me, and this is my friend who, she's not good at taking her own intuitive advice. Her intuition could be banging her on the head about her own situation. Can't hear it. If it's about someone else's situation, she can hear it. She's actually the person who told me about Dolores Cannon years ago when Dolores was still alive and told me to get into Dolores's work. There's multiple things. Like she had like sometimes sent me books that were like, she was really good about receiving messages for other people. And she said, she called me up and she's like, you know what? I'm not going to talk to this guy anymore because I had a really weird feeling. And she's like, this is going to sound crazy, but I feel like these guys are connected to human trafficking. And she's like, there's no reason for me to feel this way. And I didn't know what to think of it. I thought she was kind of, I don't know, because also her own judgment with guys was never really great. Now looking back with the Diddy stuff and some of the very specific people that are mentioned in these cases were the exact same women that he was helping them manage their business. Okay. So before I move on to like where we're going with this, as you guys know, I went under hypnosis. The first time I went under hypnosis, this was in 2021. This was years after this guy had been out of my life. You know, I don't remember what year we stopped dating, but we dated on and off for a couple years. But then like sometimes we wouldn't talk for a period of time. And then eventually it was completely called off. And then I never responded to him again. And so years later, it had been like at least 4, maybe 5 years. I went under hypnosis and wanted to know, because I always got this reptilian energy from this guy. And for years, it always like wondered because I could never fully add up his story, even still to this day. Now with this Diddy case, there are so many things in that case that added little things for me that I was like, oh, wait. And then some of the very specific names, the exact same people and what those exact people are being accused of being part of. And he was managing those people. But, so it probably was what people are saying that it is. However, you know, there was like times where I didn't know if I was like, what is this guy involved in? Like, it was just very troubling. And I was like, but it was very manipulative too, because then he would be like, so like kind and compassionate and nice. And I'm like, there's no way that he's involved in all this crazy stuff. But I was also really into the reptilian stuff. And I was like, is this a handler? I can tell he's a handler for other people. Is he here to try to handle me, or is this a regular experience? Some people in my life always joked that I should have listened to him and I would be much more successful right now. And that's probably true. That's probably true. If I did take his advice and did what he wanted me to, I probably would be. I'd probably be implicated in like some of these lawsuits right now if I'd actually listened to that asshole. So that said, under hypnosis, I asked my subconscious mind, what is the deal with this guy? Is he reptilian? Is this guy a reptilian? That's what I needed to know, because I was like, this guy's energy would like fluctuate. And sometimes it was almost like he was wearing a mask of energy and it would come off sometimes. It was just very bizarre, but it was not like a very involved relationship. It was like we would date and then sometimes we'd get like annoyed at each other and stop talking. So it was also like, it wasn't like making a big influence in my life to occasionally then when we reconnected. The answer in my hypnosis was, and it's so interesting because now this makes much more sense than it did. And now we're going to get into some of this Diddy stuff. They told me that he is not reptilian. He is not biologically reptilian. And he's not on a soul level reptilian. He is part of a reptilian web, and that there is a web that all of these energies are intertwined in, but that doesn't mean that these people are reptilians or that they're possessed by reptilians or that they specifically have an attachment. They're a part of this web that is harnessing reptilian energy. Okay. So let's move on here to Diddy. Okay. This is crazy. All of this Diddy stuff coming out is absolutely crazy. Whether it ends up being true or not in the court system, the court of public opinion has already made their decision on this. Of course, I don't know what is the truth of any of these things, but the court of public opinion, there's no coming back from this for him. Low-level operatives, you're right. So we're going to go through a couple of these things here. So we have Beyonce, Aaliyah, Mariah Carey, Justin Bieber, and I forgot to get a picture of Usher. So let's come back to Diddy here. So as you guys know, I covered the Harvey Weinstein trial, and that really revealed this ritual. Now, you don't have to say it's a black magic ritual, okay? We don't have to go that far. But this is something that is ritualistic. I watched the Harvey trial for 2 months. I watched what every single one of those victims had to say. And it was the same exact story. He brought these people to a hotel lobby bar or something along those lines for a business meeting. When they got to the meeting, he was not downstairs. Some woman who worked for him, or occasionally he would be, but he would be in transit coming up the stairs. And he would basically make them kind of like come upstairs and then have the meeting inside of his hotel room, which is then where he would take his rotten, deformed dick out. If you guys watched my whole series breaking down the trial, you know what I mean. And so, but what it was ritualist. That's a habit. That's a ritual. He gets those girls in that hotel and then gets them into the bathroom. And now personally, me with my ability to kind of have a nuanced opinion on situations, and this is with no way defending Harvey, it's very obvious that this is someone with severe sexual trauma. What's going on with his gangrene balls? As you guys know, his testicles got gangrene, and then they had to put the testicles inside his thighs because they were rotten. The skin rotted. So the universe was trying to stop this guy in his tracks, and that was not working either. And he continued to do this, and he would not, like, it was like an addiction that he could not allow a starlet, some up-and-coming actress, to become award-winning. You know, he had over 80 Oscars, and there's a reason for that. One, yes, Harvey did make good movies. You know, credit where it's due. Also, every single person was terrified of him, and every single person was indebted to him in one way or another, and anyone who didn't listen to him suffered the consequences. This is even in the people that were voting for the Oscars, for the Academy. Okay, so of course any starlet that was put into that room, if the Academy is afraid of their anonymous vote going known by Harvey Weinstein. So this is a ritual, whether it's a black magic ritual or just ritualistic and habitual in nature. He could not allow a starlet to go into her full talent, fame, all of that, without going through his dick first. Now, let's take a look at Diddy. Diddy is giving Harvey Weinstein of hip hop, right? Alleged. And this is for entertainment purposes only. It was this same type of thing. We're seeing these people as they become introductory into the system, into the hip hop community. They need to go through some people. Now, I'm going to say, I don't think Harvey Weinstein came up with this. I think this was done to him early on in his career. I don't think that Diddy came up with this. I think that this was done to Diddy early on in his career as well. And I think that this is someone like R. Kelly, say, for example. R. Kelly, you can very much tell that this was done to him, and that's why he does it. Does that make these people okay or right? No. You know, everybody has to be a cycle breaker for their own shit. But the thing here is that we can look back and we can see Diddy with Usher in the 90s. When Usher was 16 years old was when his hit came out. Like, can you believe how young he was? It's insane. So there's stories of when Usher was 14, 15 years old that he went to Diddy camp, which means go and live at Diddy's house and learn the lifestyle What the fuck does learn the lifestyle mean for a 14-year-old? So when Usher talks about that time, people are like, oh, wow, there must have been so many bitches. There must have been so much, this and that, sex and everything. And everyone's kind of like, because it's not like, oh, yeah, all the bitches were there. Was the Playboy mansion, like, which has its own conspiracies, of course. But this is showing something very interesting. Usher, unbelievably talented, was not really maybe allowed to go to that next level until he was indoctrinated in that way. Let's look at Aaliyah. Aaliyah, another example of someone who was indoctrinated in. Now, we look back through history and we look at people thousands of years ago and we're like, oh my God, they married 12-year-olds. Oh my God, people were selling off 12-year-olds to whoever was the best suitor for their family at that time. Well, this is what poor Aaliyah went through. Not 100 years ago, maybe a different century, but in the 1990s, when she was from 12 to 16 years old, she was basically like given to R. Kelly. And R. Kelly was like 27 years old at the time when they got married. Like, that's insane. So we talk about these things that happened thousands of years ago in royal times. And this is all coming back to this royal shit, okay? And I know I don't know anything about the modern day royals, but these conspiracies that we hear, there was always this idea of sacrificing a virgin. Why for the last 5,000 years has there been stories about sacrificing virgins? But then we look at our modern day royals, not exactly the royal family, because, personally, I believe they are everything that people say they are in the bad way. But I don't really get into it because I just literally could not care less about any family on earth. Like, I literally care more about a family crossing the street than I care about the royal family. And so, but when we look at this kind of royal behavior, what did we have? We had a closed group of people. It was nepotism. People used to have incest, used to make babies from incest to not lower their genes. And then there was always this idea of sacrificing a virgin. But then when we look back and we look at all of these people, all of these young starlets and stars, we see that they kind of needed to go through some weird type of initiation process as well, where you go and stay. And Diddy is just the face. Once again, like Harvey Weinstein was the face of a machine. It is a machine, the way these people operate. And I've said this like 10 years ago, even before the original Me Too movement. And then when the Me Too movement happened, I was like, oh, real stuff is not going to, we're changing, but real stuff is not going to change until people start to accept that men are victims almost as much as women. Now, does that mean they're victims of women? No, they're mostly victims of men. Right? So that's why I hate that argument when they're like, well, men get raped too. And I'm like, yes, they do. And we actually do need to put more attention to that. But saying men get raped too by other men, okay? Abused by other men. So this is still the problem. I just think that, and not to say that there is no women abusers, because there absolutely are. 100%. There are women abusers. So now let's get into this. Sloan Bella, the psychic on YouTube. People told me for years to check her stuff out. I only just checked it out last week, and I've never saw someone so eloquently describe what this conspiracy, this Illuminati conspiracy is. So we kind of all know this Illuminati conspiracy, that it's like, in order to be famous, allegedly, and to have all of these riches and these billions and billions of dollars, someone basically needs to sacrifice something, sacrifice someone, or then we have the MKUltra stuff. Now, MKUltra gets used all wrong. And that's why I'm not going to suggest the book to you guys, because as much as I would like people to have the right information about MKUltra, sometimes if you are not grounded and you read about MKUltra, you might believe that it happened to you. It can induce schizophrenic tendencies. If you ever think that you were involved in anything like this, never read up on it, to be honest with you, because it does cause people to have false psychosis sometime that were never victims of it. So this is also why I don't go super deep into what the real MKUltra stuff is, because it's not really beneficial for most people to know. However, it enrages me that most people use this term wrong. Like people will say like, they MKUltra'd him, meaning like Kanye or something. And it's like, okay, well, someone doesn't get MKUltra'd at 30 something years old. Sorry. That's something else. There is handlers, there's manipulation, there's indoctrinations, there's ritual, there's all that stuff. MKUltra itself is a very specific method. Oh, you said, yes, that happened to you. It's really, you have to be so careful sometimes taking in this information, which is why that guy who shared the information used the analogy that sometimes your mind is a garden. And sometimes all it needs is some water and some sunlight and no more seeds being planted of anything, because it's not there yet. And it will not fully come to harvest if you mess up the soil now. So the real MKUltra stuff is in a very abridged way, and it is so demented, but allegedly they can tell from infancy if someone has this it factor, star power, it factor, all of this. There was a very controversial personality test in the 70s. I can't think of what the name of it is now. And it's very hard to find information on. There's like one Rolling Stone article from the 70s about how controversial it is, because basically it's a personality test that could be given up until below like 18 months old. So like imagine giving a personality test to an infant, but it's so advanced. And then there's connections to that this personality test originates from the angel of death in some way. The angel of death meaning the Nazi scientist in Auschwitz. So there are some conspiracies of that. I don't know if that was 100% true, but that it's a derivative of those experiments that they did in Auschwitz. And that this became the basis of the mind control tactics. And then when all of these Nazi scientists came over here with Project Paperclip, and they were basically let off the hook for their war crimes in exchange to work for the US government. This is where people say that some of these tactics and stuff came about. And so there's this personality test that was like completely outruled, outdone. It was like in the 70s that people were like, no, this is absolutely unethical, done. However, they say that this test is used to see who these monarch people are. You know, so we see a lot of times with the MKUltra stuff, people talk about like the monarch butterfly, monarch programming, and that type of stuff is basically the concept that, like, say, for example, Justin Bieber, whose photo's up here. Someone like Justin Bieber could be found from such a young age. Now, it doesn't always have to be infancy. The Britney Spears type people very much fit into this. There's people who don't always fit into this. And they basically say, oh, yes, a signature that can be detected. You're so right, Ian, because then this is the other thing, too, is these energy signatures. So some of these people who they say are working in these spaces, the way that like a shaman can work in the astral, sometimes these like, I don't know, magicians, warlocks, whatever, can sometimes work in the astral as well. And they can tell people's energetic signatures. And they can also tell these souls that have this contract. So basically what needs to be done is a person cannot be like MKUltra if their father is not willing to harm them, because you need the parents' cooperation to do this. So they specifically not only seek out people who have this kind of it factor, this signature, this energetic signature, but also this mentality that you can tell from infancy. They also seek out people who specifically their father can be blackmailed into harming the child, or the father or someone can get eliminated. The parents need to be invested. Now, say someone like a Britney Spears figure, her dad fits the bill perfectly, because they need to have someone who has addictive tendencies, someone who can be blackmailed, someone who a lot of times they get this person to admit to things that they would do to their child or have done to their child. And then they use that as blackmail and basically say like, okay, well, we can basically pay you to start managing your kid in this way and doing these things, or you go to jail for what you've done. Its choice is yours. This is the stuff that's in the MKUltra book. Now, what they say is and this is like a very common concept because, so what we need is like, okay, let's say you have your whole personality. And we talked about this with some of like the trauma stuff, right? So sometimes when we have a spiritual split, we talked about in one of the other lives where your soul comes in whole, something happens, and it's almost like a little fractal breaks off. But then you continue to operate, and maybe that part of you either creates a personality and that becomes your whole personality, or it becomes kind of like your dark shadow, your dark passenger, as Dexter would say. And what they do in these mind control programs is that they cause so much trauma in this person at an infancy, young age, toddler age, pubescent age, or like people, you know, claim about Bieber or Usher or these things, they claim that these people, they still have their innocence, right? And there's nothing more powerful in this world than pure innocence and pure creative innocence of a child, right? And Sloan Bella put this very well. She said, these people are chasing diamonds, purses, all the property, all the riches, all this very high value stuff. But the thing that is most high value in the world is this energy that is of the pure energy before someone has been broken, before someone has been split, before someone has been corrupted mentally, psychologically, and emotionally. So this is what's crazy is we've heard of these things for years of like sacrificing virgins for the success of this kingdom, or, you know, these queens. What was that? The one Queen Elizabeth, one of the old Queen Elizabeths that like she used to torture like hundreds of people a day and like stick them with prongs and everything. It's interesting that this is the same pattern that we see talked about in the music industry. And let me see, let me look at my notes here. Okay, so this is a ritualistic rite of passage. And this is the way Sloan Bella described it so perfectly, because I've been into this for a long time, but I guess maybe with her channeling of psychic messages, the wording comes out so clearly, where she says, this is a sodomy ritual, which is a rite of passage. So basically, kind of like a rite of passage is like, say, if you're a knight and then you receive your sword and then you've been knighted, that is a rite of passage into the next thing. You know, when you make when you do your graduation from 8th grade into high school, that's a rite of passage. So to explain this thing where, say, Harvey Weinstein, which we knew, that starlet, that rite of passage was not going to go to the next level. Gwyneth Paltrow doesn't get to be just a Nepo baby into an Oscar winner. That rite of passage, you need to go through Harvey Weinstein's dick first. And that's that. So we already know that this is what's happening. Because then also when this happened, everybody went to the shadows, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay. Oh, nobody knew this was going on in Hollywood, but everybody knew. Because the first day I ever worked on a movie, well, first time I ever worked on a movie in LA was in 2012. I worked on a independent feature. First day on set, the wardrobe woman told me, you know, it was around the time of Sundance, and she's like, oh, we should go. And I'm like, you could just go without being invited? She's like, oh yeah, you go to the hotels and you stay in the hotel and you hang out in the lobby and go to the parties, but you just can't go to the film festival. I was like, oh, I didn't know that people would just go. And then she was like, yeah, but if you go, just be careful. And I'm like, why? She's like, because of Harvey Weinstein. That was the first time I ever heard his name. Obviously, I had watched Tarantino movies and saw his name like in passing in the credits, but I never knew who he was. And he say, how long my nails are. I know I have to cut them. They're annoying me now. But basically, she said, oh, watch out, because at these festivals, if you meet Harvey Weinstein, he's going to be all over you, and he likes girls like you. And at the time, I was like 23 years old, you know. And even though watching the trial, he was not someone who was specifically into younger women. They were actually all women. They were just had this spark. It wasn't about them being young and pure and virginal like it is for a lot of these creeps. Harvey, like all of them, They're looking for this spark of like pure dreams. Like when we're dreaming up our big dreams, like say when someone like Lady Gaga was dreaming of being famous, of dreaming of being a star. That's what I mean about this extremely valuable energy. This is the such rich manifestation energy, and it's so potent. And so we know that there's these rites of passage. So we see when Usher is 15 years old, has to go to Diddy camp to learn the lifestyle. How many videos have resurfaced of Justin Bieber hanging out at Diddy's house for 3 days? And so this is obviously someone who, now we know what happened with Diddy and Cassie. Cassie was like, what, 17 years old when that song came out? The Me and You song. And then after that, she kind of never really fully, I maybe heard her do one song after that. And now we see in the Diddy trial, well, that he settled, so it was never a trial, it was just a court case. What happened with that was and if you guys don't know, it is so crazy that he literally took Cassie, hired all of these male sex workers to gang abuse her, and he filmed it, jerked off to it. I mean, maybe that's the part I should have not said, right? I censor the wrong words. And then basically blackmail her with this for years. And because she was so ashamed of it and so afraid of it getting out, he was also punching her, kicking her, choking her, horrible, demented, evil stuff that he was doing to her. But she was so guilty about that humiliation that he kept this going for years, that she became addicted to drugs so that she could get through the shame of it. So what happens to a lot of these people is they're young, their dreams, the most pure energy. Sometimes they are virgins, and sometimes they're children, and sometimes they're just a pure dreamer artist still, and they just have this pure energy. And Sloan Bella said it so well. She said, these people are chasing diamonds, purses, money, but the real value is this pure energy. And this is what goes back at least 5,000 years. We hear about all these royal people sacrificing virgins. It is a rite of passage. Same thing like Harvey Weinstein said, you're not going to become an Oscar winner until you go through me. The pattern seems to be there for some of these other things. Now, I know we're already about an hour now, but we need to get into the selling your soul stuff because a couple of things. Also, too, Michael Jackson, right? Michael Jackson having these underage boys come and sleep at his house. Underage boys who were aspiring singers, aspiring dancers. I know a lot of people don't want to believe the Michael Jackson one. Just because someone was a victim of something doesn't mean that they can't do it themselves, or that they, same. I mean, R. Kelly has the same energy as Michael Jackson. I mean, I will not be proven wrong on that. Just because one is stuck in childhood. Oh, sorry. Back to the MKUltra stuff before I go to the selling your soul. So you're a whole personality, a whole person as this pure, innocent child. As we know, sometimes a traumatic event can cause your soul to kind of fractal. Now, what they learned in Nazi Germany, in Auschwitz, when they were doing these experiments, they saw that you could cause someone to have a split personality. It was once called schizophrenia, but now we know schizophrenia is something different. It was once called multiple personality disorder. Now it's called DID, dissociative identity disorder. Regardless, we all know what this concept is. We know what this concept of having multiple personalities is. And to some degree, all of us have some level of that, because when we talk about Carl Jung, we know that the persona is a part of us, right? We have the self, the ego, and the persona. The persona is the outer layer. So we all have personas. You have a work persona. You have with your family, with your friends, with this. This is a normal human behavior, which sometimes is coming from trauma as well. Sometimes our persona does come from the fact of oh, becoming a people pleaser because that was the only way we could get our needs met. Or like we talked about last week, someone could become a narcissist. That is kind of the same thing as becoming a people pleaser. It's just whether, that trauma caused you to want to take from at others' expense, or you want to get what you want by taking at your own expense as a people pleaser. So any of these personalities and personas could happen to all of us from trauma at any point. For me, what I've been dealing with over the last couple months is really like, oh, hi, Emma. Thank you for your super chat. So basically, what I've been dealing with over these last months is realizing that like me believing that I've been so emotionally even for all of my life is actually a persona that developed at such an infancy that I don't have a lot of spikes of super bad or low, but I also don't have a lot of spikes of insanely happy either. And that I was actually kind of keeping myself in a middle ground for a lot of my life emotionally because I didn't want to experience pain. I didn't want to experience embarrassment. I didn't want to experience humiliation. What developed was an extremely strong doer type of personality, which now I can see, is yes, that's a part of me, but it is also a personality that developed because of trauma. Now with the MKUltra, it is an extreme, horrible, disgusting version of this. So what they'll do is instead of like the trauma, they purposely cause the trauma to fractal the soul, the spirit, the mind, the mental state. So basically, you could abuse someone who in there is such an impressionable time, teenager, child, baby, and it causes them to fractal. And then these people are they're so good at NLP and manipulation that they actually, this is what the original handler thing was. This is where the original handler stuff comes from. Not as much like the stuff we see now. Socially, the way we use the word handler is a little different than this. These were real handlers that these people controlled the altars. So it was one person, let's say, for example, Britney Spears, right? This is just an example, but she fits the description. So sometimes Britney will have a very strong Southern accent and she is a full-blown Southern Britney. Sometimes she is sex kitten Britney, which is the one that everybody wants her to be again, right? Everybody wants that personality back. They look at her on Instagram. People who want her to look like she did when she was 20, who don't even look like themselves in 2020, okay? The last 4 years, they don't even look like themselves, but they want her 20 years later to still look the same. Okay. Also, do you guys know anyone with teeth? Teeth shift. The whole thing about Britney's teeth changing is insane to me. Like, did you guys just wake up? Not you guys specifically, but the people who say this stuff. Did you just wake up to reality? Have you ever known anyone whose teeth have shifted? Have you ever known someone throughout the course of life? People's teeth change. I used to have a huge gap and it has gotten smaller over the years. I'm lucky that mine have shifted inward. Some people's are shifting outward. So this happens, but say, look at Britney. So sometimes she's her very Southern Britney self, her simple Britney, barefoot in Louisiana Britney. Then we have like this sex kitten Britney, this VMA music video, iconic superstar Britney. Then remember when Britney was speaking in a British accent, right? Like a completely different personality, right? Then we have the Instagram stuff now. These, what they say in the MKUltra is that they're purposely fractaled, and then these certain ones are leaned into and nurtured. So this is where the Monarch programming comes from. They believed that if you could take these figureheads, Marilyn Monroe, for example, Marilyn Monroe becomes an archetype of society that we're still literally trying to live up to. We're trying to live up to be like this woman who wasn't even the woman. That wasn't her name. This wasn't her life. She was unhappy with this. Like everything about what Marilyn's persona was contrived. And a lot of people believe that she was the mastermind that contrived it all. And that is possible because survival is manipulation. As much as people want to act like it's not. Dogs manipulate, babies manipulate. Even an unintelligent person can be very manipulative. It does not make someone a mastermind. However, there could have been people behind Marilyn that were guiding this as well, which also makes a lot of sense. When she could have... Candy Jones is another example. This was one of my first ever TikTok videos. Candy Jones was one of the world's like first supermodels or whatever. And she was like in the 1940s. She literally went under hypnosis and retrieved memories of another personality of herself that had a dark wig and worked for the government as a spy. And then her husband, who had put her under hypnosis, they found the passport with the fake name on it. So she had a passport issued for her other persona, but had absolutely no recollection of this other persona. So this is what they're talking about with the MKUltra. This has to be done at a young age. A lot of the stuff that they talk about, when Paris Hilton came out about the, what is it called? Troubled teen... I forget what it's called. It's like the industry, the troubled teen industry, where they basically take children or teens who are acting bad, right? They kidnap them in the middle of the night and then they bring them to a facility so that they can correct their behavior. Kind of similar to the stuff that used to be on like Maury and Dr. Phil, but regular people would send their children there. And it was very expensive. People spent a lot of their money on it. It was typically for more wealthy people. But then this really came to light when Paris Hilton came out against the school that she was taken to as a teenager. Dude, let me tell you, everything that she talks about that happened in that school is everything that is in the MKUltra book. Literally all of the tactics that she says are the same exact tactics that they use to create the separate personalities in these people. They talk about how they would starve them. Being food deprived is another thing. Not allowing them to sleep, not allowing them to turn the lights off, not allowing them to speak for days. And then if they speak, they have to start over again. The type of things that Paris Hilton said that was happening at that troubled teen school that she was taken to the fucking T, are in this MKUltra book. Now, this is very interesting. This is something I've never really talked about on anything public, I don't believe, because it is some real shit. When I read it, it just rang so true to me. And this was also then Paris Hilton came out shortly after this, but she was the first person who came to my mind. So there's the MKUltra people, you know, let's say, for example, a Britney type of person is a perfect example. Starts at the young age, becomes fractaled into these kind of different personas. Around 20s, that programming can only work for so long and it starts to implode on itself. One of the things that is in this MKUltra book, they want these people to become addicted to drugs. They want them to become addicted to prescriptions. They do not want them smoking weed. One of the number one things is saying that smoking weed actually deprograms the MKUltra programming. So that is also another interesting thing that is in that book. They say that that is one of the drugs that should not be done for these MKUltra victims if they're trying to keep them, you know, mind control slaves. But then there's this other thing called hierarchical mind control slaves. And these hierarchical ones are, it's so interesting. And to me, the first thing that I thought was Paris Hilton. And then afterwards, then when I saw Paris eventually came out about this troubled teen thing, it made even more sense, where she said that, and now, am I saying that specifically this is Paris Hilton, her thing, or this is something that's happening? I don't know. But the hierarchical mind control slave is someone who comes from a wealthy or elite family. And so say someone like Britney comes from a regular family. They really break those people because those people, their family can just be easily blackmailed and financially taken advantage of and scared. Now you have someone say, I mean, let's use the example of a Paris Hilton. Kathy Hilton and her dad, right? Those are not easy people to take advantage of, right? They have the resources, the money, the lawyers, the everything. Now, I mean, Kathy Hilton's a little off. I wouldn't be surprised if she got through some rite of passage herself. But these hierarchical mind control slaves, they say, come from elite families and they experience a very light version of the mind control abuse. So they do this, and they do fractal them, but they don't completely fractal them in the way that like a Britney or someone would be. And the abuse that they go through is much softer, but they indoctrinate them with almost how to be a handler. So then instead of creating all of these different mind control slaves, which is so much work, right? It literally would take like 20 years to fully develop one into the full fruition. And then it's going to deconstruct in a few years anyway, if this is all true. But the hierarchical mind control slaves, you train them to set the standard for the others. Now let's just use Paris Hilton as an example. Who is Paris Hilton responsible for? Kim Kardashian, right? So Kim Kardashian herself would not have to be MKUltra because Paris Hilton indoctrinated her with this teaching and lifestyle at that time. Now, to say that some of these people would not be going through a rite of passage in their pubescent years as they're breaking into the industry, it doesn't mean that they're going to be exempt from that. It means that's the difference of what I'm saying, is that where they say sometimes people are MKUltra, and I'm like, well, a lot of the MKUltra stuff happens at a young age. It has to start at a young age, like before the age of 7, in order for the brain to not be fully developed. These other people who kind of appear to have these tendencies later could have been through this troubled teen, which I think it's crazy that the amount of famous people that have gone to these troubled teen things, like Kat Von D went to the same exact school as Paris Hilton, and all of these things. When you look at the celebrities who've gone to the troubled teen, Drew Barrymore, like these people who went to troubled teen facilities are insane. And also some people, you know, from the internet, there's a lot of people who were kind of like semi-famous that are talking about that they were done there too. And I was like, and it's so, and I know there's so many people that went to these things who didn't become famous. One of my friends in high school was sent to one, and we thought she was lying. Only like as an adult, I realized that that was true, because she was like, they took me in the middle of the night. She's like, they took me to like Kentucky. They've been force feeding me here. Like, she came back with this crazy story. And I mean, looking back, she was telling the truth, apparently, because it's literally all the same shit Paris Hilton said and all this stuff. And she came back with a lot of other lies. So it wasn't just that we didn't believe her about that. There was a lot of other things that were proven lies. So I don't know but it happens to a lot of people. Not all of them are famous. Not all of them become famous. But it's the very same tactics that they say are used on the children MKUltra victims are what she said was being used in those facilities. And then one thing that she said was that the other people kept getting it worse than her, was that she didn't get it as bad as the other people, which I always found was interesting, because that really matches with the hierarchical mind control slave topic, where she's responsible for Nicole Richie, Lindsay Lohan, Kim Kardashian. She was right when Britney fell off and got into the conservatorship, she was hanging out with Paris Hilton. Like, all of those people. You remember in the early 2000s when Paris Hilton was like, oh, they got like an up the skirt crotch shot of her vagina. And then a week later, Lindsay Lohan, and then Britney, and then Nicole Richie, and then this one and that one. It was like, and then we saw everyone's crotch shot in the paparazzi stuff within like a week. And the same way that Paris Hilton became famous is the same exact way Kim Kardashian became famous, from this sex tape that was obviously brokered, that is so well documented that it was brokered. So with all of that said, let's get into the selling your soul thing before, so now I didn't see the, you said, did she see my comment? I didn't. So with the selling your soul thing, now, a lot of people say that you're not able to actually sell your soul, that what you can do is kind of sell access to your body. That makes a little bit more sense than selling your soul. However, there's this documentary. I watched it about 10 years ago. It's called, like, I don't know, How to Sell Your Soul. And it was actually only a couple blocks from me here. Took place. So this guy, they did a casting, and it's like a low level documentary. It's like a YouTube documentary. It's not like on Netflix or anything, but it's so good. It's dark. It's iconic. And it was actually very informational. And they put out a thing of said, like, who wants to be famous? So they had a casting call of who wants to be famous. All these people came, and then they asked the people, would you be willing to sell your soul on camera to see if it actually works and see if it makes you famous? A bunch of people say no. And then some guy, like, who's atheist, goth type of looking atheist guy says, of course, because he doesn't even believe in any of it anyway. So then they take this guy on the process of how to sell your soul. Now, it is something that I believed in because I have heard stories before. I think I've talked about this before. When I first moved to LA, I was managing a weed shop in Hollywood, and the weed shop was owned by, I know the word right now is no longer acceptable, but what he called himself was Gypsy, and he was very proud to call himself Gypsy. I don't know what his whole ethnicity was. I think he was Romani. I don't know. He never told me that. He's only ever referred to himself as Gypsy, and he had a psychic business. He also owns the weed shop, and has this whole magical family, this whole community of people. And it was crazy. The stuff that I learned about the community through him was incredible. But one of the things he told me was about the selling the soul stuff. And he told me that there was a house in Venice that people used to go to, and you write what you want on the paper, you slide it under the door, and then someone will like come and tell you what to do. And he said he knows a bunch of people who did it, who went to the house. He was like, you know, I've seen it happen with many people. And he said that these people always got what they've got the riches, they got the cars, they got this, they got money, but then it would always like really horribly backfire shortly after. So then it would be like a horrible accident or something, or like things like that. So he said he had seen that many people had done this. There had been a thing. He's lived in LA his whole life since he was a teenager. So he was like, I've seen this happen for years. He's like, I know some of these celebrities have done it, because he says he knows whatever the place, one of the houses that people go in Venice. Okay. Now in this documentary, they talk about how they go to this place which no longer exists. It's like a dumpling spot now. I will not be eating dumplings from there. Let me just tell you that. No, I cannot believe. The energy must be horrible, because the energy was horrible already. So it was a place called Pan Pipes. Pan Pipes in Hollywood on Cahuenga was actually the store from The Craft. So the movie The Craft, where they go into that store, partially it takes place in Pan Pipes, and then part of it is in a set, because they go to like the back and then it's huge. Like, no, it's not all huge back there. So it was like I wouldn't call it a spiritual shop. It was like a hardcore magic. It was not like crystal shop. It was like hardcore magic. And I used to live, I still live a couple blocks from it, but I used to live 1 block from it. And I would walk past that store. I never went in. I would look at the window, and I would literally get like this crazy heavy, dense feeling. And I was like, I'll never go in that store. But I used to walk past it all the time, check in, like a peek, like look at it. But I was like, no, I'll never go in there. And, but it's really, was very iconic. And then the main actress from The Craft, what is her name? Fariza? You know who I'm talking about, the one that plays Nancy in The Craft. She bought it with the money from The Craft, bought that store, and was the owner of it for years. So it's closed now. It closed, I think, in like 2020 maybe, or 2019, but it had been there for ever. It had been there for like at least like 30 years or more. And so in this documentary, they take this guy to Pan Pipes, and the woman behind the counter basically walks him through the process of how to sell your soul. And she said that in the past, you know, when this spell was created, it would take a really long time to do this, because basically you needed a special piece of paper, you needed a special pen, you needed special ink, you needed to write the thing in your own blood, you needed this special type of plant, you needed this special type of herb. And back in the day, when this was originally created, it could have taken someone months or a year or years to get all of these items. They might have to go on a journey and travel to the next city, travel to the next country to get some of these items. But in the modern world, they take him down to basically like a witch warehouse, supply house of wholesale of all these different witchy items, kind of like a Botanica wholesale place in downtown LA. And they just get the right paper, they get the right thing, they get this, they get that, they get all the stuff in like 1 or 2 stops. So whereas someone might have had to go through a year or 2 to go through the process of selling their soul, now this guy gets all the stuff within, and obviously too, it's a documentary, it's on a budget, they want to get it all done with. So this guy goes through the process. At the end of the documentary, they do a ritual at the end. I don't know how much was faked for it. He did have some success after his movie, did like a film festival circuit, and he had some success, and it did benefit his life in a way. It was just now, what I want to share though, is the woman who was working in panpipes. She tells such an incredible analogy of what happens when you sell your soul. So this is why when people say you can't sell your soul, I do believe that you can't, because your soul is not really yours to sell. It can't really be sold. However, and people say that more so you're selling the opportunity to kind of use the body and use the energy. However, I do think it's much more than that because of this woman's description. And she said that she tried selling her soul years before. Halfway through the process, she backed out of it. And she said that the effects of on her body and her health were detrimental. And she said that even though she didn't complete the ritual, the horrible effect that it had on her health, her life, her everything, she said it was just like not worth it at all. However, she still still allows other people to make that decision and will help them with that process. And she, I think, said she'd only help up to a certain point, and then it was in his own hands. So what she said is that when someone sells their soul, that she said, imagine a tree. And the tree of your life, basically, of your many lives. You have all these different lives, and you might start from a seedling and grow into sprout. And then you'll have some leaves and some branches that become thicker. The roots will become deeper. This is your many lives. This is your soul's evolution over many lives. So for many different lives, you're coming from a little baby soul of a seedling into a rich oak tree that is so wise and old and all of this stuff. And this is throughout many lifetimes, you're having that evolution. So see that evolution as a tree. She said, now imagine when you see on a tree, like a dead spot, like sometimes it'll be like a dead spot, a hole, and the tree continues to grow around it, but that spot is dead and it's not getting any of the nutrients. It's just there. The tree can continue to grow. It will grow new leaves. The leaves will shed, all of these things, but then you'll be there at that dead part of the tree forever. So she said basically that this is the process of the soul's journey, is to grow through all of these things. And we all are going through this individual process. When you decide to sell your soul, which is for material gain in this life right now, you're trying to give them access to something that is far beyond this life. Whether you can or can't do that, we don't know. But what you think you're doing is you think you're doing that, right? You think you're giving this invaluable soul in exchange for what's here right now. And so with that, she says, you become that dead part on the tree, and all of consciousness continues to evolve around you. Your soul family continues to grow. All of these things that were once single cell organisms will eventually evolve into consciousness, into individuality, into a soul. Will go through a process of a human life, will eventually evolve past human life, but you will just stay there in this dead spot that it just is. It just doesn't, it can't grow. And she said, if you're lucky, if you're so lucky, the only way out of that is if at some point there's some type of greater force that decides you deserve another chance, or that this part of consciousness needs to be reworked. And she says, very rarely, if you do this, you will eventually start back at the beginning. So whatever type of soul evolution that you've had, is done, erased, completely forgotten. Now, what's very interesting is there is other stuff that talk about this. So in Journey of Souls, they talk about it. Dolores Cannon's work talks about it. Both of those have said that under hypnosis, people said, like, well, what about really bad people? And we know really bad people, they're still evolving. There's still a greater purpose. They still have the opportunity to grow. They have different lives, all of that stuff. But then they're like, what about someone so bad, so evil, someone that's never can come back, someone that has so done something so rotten, so horrible, so bad? What they say in these cases is that this is very rare. But if a soul has basically no potential to grow any further, it is not going to be able to evolve in any other way, the greater aspect of consciousness will absorb it back. They will absorb it back into the oneness. And then eventually it can be somehow used when another soul spawns, but it won't be this soul starting again. So that's what it says in the Dr. Michael Newton books and Dolores Cannon's work, that basically in this rare occasion that some type of soul is so unreachable, which they say is so rare, that they might just be absorbed back into the oneness, and then maybe some tiny part of them could eventually be used in another soul later, but it's already been cleaned and wiped. So it is pretty interesting that what she described has come up in different hypnosis victims. So what do I think about the selling your soul thing? Do I think you can do it? To a degree, yeah, I do. But now with this deep shadow work that I've been in for the last, I don't know, couple months that I've been going through it, and seeing how my own trauma in a way created a personality in me, and then that personality becomes this driving force in my life, I think that that is very similar to what is happening with the selling your soul thing for a lot of these celebrities, where I feel like a lot of them are not necessarily selling their soul. There's a part of them that broke off, whether that was from a natural trauma or an unnatural trauma in an MKUltra way, regardless, a part of them broke off. And as a coping mechanism, this part develops a personality. Now, sometimes that personality will take over, or sometimes that personality will be one of several personalities in like a multiple personality situation. Whatever it is, it creates this persona. It creates a personality. This personality can become the driving force of that person's life. Or it doesn't become the driving force, but then they get successful. Or they have opportunities. Or now they're put with the opportunity of, oh, all you have to do is fuck Harvey Weinstein to get this role. You're put in this situation. This is why they say selling your soul, in my opinion. That it's not an actual selling of the soul. I think you can actually do the ritual. I don't think that the ritual is connected to a big thing. Because like I said, when I was on the ayahuasca, I was assured that there is no big bad out there. There is no grand force of evil. There is no grand force of darkness. The way that there is a force of light, there is not an equal force that is darkness. It is just the absence of light. So it's the equal force being absent as opposed to an opposite but equal force. So with my evolution of stuff, because I no longer believe that there's a big bad out there, and I know that some people don't like that because they believe in the devil. Honestly, believing in the devil is you're creating an egregore, creating a big bad. Your consciousness is creating a big bad. So sit with that if that's something that you really do resonate with, if you really do resonate with there's a devil. But in my opinion, there's not really a big bad. So they're not really selling it to something. And if they were, it would be equally powerful to God, which is crazy sometimes. When people talk about the devil, they like give the devil more power than they give God, which is wild to me. So with that, they might have had this wound. Say the wound is a self-worth wound, which many of us have, and we all have different versions of it, and it comes out in all different ways. So let's say it's a self-worth wound. Let's say someone like, okay, and so then we go back to like, say the MKUltra stuff, where I said you need like a father that's willing to harm the child. Let's look at all the big pop stars. Britney, with the dad in the conservatorship. Rihanna, dad taking advantage of her. She won't even talk to her dad, sued her dad, cut ties with him. Beyonce and her dad, the way that she doesn't want anything to do with her dad and all the, like literally it's such a common theme of these mega stars they have this father trauma where this father pushed them into doing these things, and that the father is all financially intertwined in their stuff in that way, and that the father themselves seem to be extremely troubled. So let's say someone, any of those three, Britney, Rihanna, Beyonce, had some self-worth of not being enough as a child. Then 16 years old, younger actually in all of their cases. 16 was when they were superstars. When they were 14 is when they were in these earlier stages. So when they're 14 years old, they're now presented with the world, like literally everything that they could ever want or dream of, and their dreams come true, and everything, the fame, the money, the this. So that wound of self-worth sparks up again. So now they're 14 years old and they're like, oh, okay, Usher can become a star. Justin Bieber could become a star. But now they need to go through this rite of passage. Now, because of this wound, it's getting flared up. So it's like, oh, a self-worth wound. Oh, wow. Now and like we've talked about before, also based on like Brittany Bento's video about her talking about when she got possessed. Because basically what it is it's a wound inside of us. It's not an outside force. It's not an outside demon. It's not an outside entity. It is our own soul fractal that has been so traumatized that now when it comes back, instead of, so we can help our self-worth in a nice, healthy way with inner child work, with therapy, with whatever. Or we can feed that self-worth wound with some poison. That tastes good, right? So we can be like, here's money, here's fame, here's attention, here's notoriety, here's connections, here's jewels and diamonds and everything. That same self-worth wound exists. But if you're going to feed that wound with therapy and healing and nourishment, or you're going to feed that wound with fame and fortune and riches, they're going to grow into two different monsters, right? This one is going to be like, oh, okay, now I can integrate. This one is going to be hungry, hungry hippos. Give me more money, give me more fame, give me more power, give me more attention. And it becomes insatiable for this wound because now this wound has been validated. So the way that wound can become a personality, imagine feeding that personality with steroids, right? So then it takes over the persona. It completely takes over the persona. So is it that they're selling their soul? Or they might be doing a ritual. That's possible. But what's actually happening inside now, I believe, is a wound, which could be an MKUltra wound that was inflicted on them purposely for this reason. Or it could just be a normal wound that any of them experienced the same way we all did. So with that, is it selling their soul? Or once again, it comes down to what is someone willing to trade their dignity for? You know, some people, for some women, it's a purse, right? There's some women who would, the horrible, disgusting man that they hate, they'll sleep with him for a purse. That's the price of selling your soul right there. You're not really selling your soul to the devil, but it is the price of it. That's what that means, you know. For some people, you know, this one might be controversial, you know, say the vaccine, you know. For some people, they didn't want to take it, but they didn't want their social life or their career to suffer. So that was the price for them, you know. And I'm not saying you sold your soul on that. I'm saying these are examples of being put in a situation that you don't want to do. Like Mariah Carey, which we didn't get to. Mariah Carey, another perfect example. She was married to, what's his name? Tommy Mottola. The one who Michael Jackson says was the devil, his producer, was Mariah Carey's first husband. When she was like a teenager, she met him. And Mariah Carey's sister, who, you know, she doesn't help and she's disassociated herself from, her sister claims that when they were children, there was a midnight mass where her mother would take Mariah and her sister to rituals, and there was all these men, and these men were allowed to sexually abuse them, and that this is part of like a ritual that happens. And then this is what eventually led to Mariah's success. Of course, these people are talented. This is going without saying how talented these people are. But, you know, $1 billion talented? Okay. Same thing with, like, say, exactly a Beyonce type of person. There's a lot of talk of Jay-Z. A lot of talk of Jay-Z right now, with all the Diddy stuff going on. Some people are claiming that it might be Jay-Z next. I don't know. I think a lot of these people in the industry, celebrities, and this is not all of it. This is the other thing that I don't, agree with on this. I think that these things might not be exactly what we think they are. Like how I felt like my ex had reptilian energy. Oh, Roots, thank you. You're so sweet with your generous super chat. Also, I've been loving my stuff. Maybe you can see I'm a little dewy now, but I've been using my Agent Nature ageless serum that I got from Roots. So yes, really what I needed to come back and be rejuvenated. But with that said, I think that these things might be interpretations of what it really is. So, say for example, Quiet on Set documentary just came out. Has Corey Feldman not been saying that for all those years? Did he not say that this is what was happening? And I think, is it exactly the way that it's portrayed in these conspiracies? These are reptilians, they're drinking blood, it's adrenochrome, people have to abuse children to get to the next level. There might be parts of this that are true, but I also feel that some of these things are interpretations and metaphors for what's happening. And this is where I'll end. Again, with what Sloan Bella had said, because like I said, she really articulated it so well in a way that was not super crazy. Like what I'm saying today sounds more crazy than some of the ways that she articulated it. So with that, two more things, actually. Let's talk about the soul cycle. Not the workout thing, the cycling of souls. So there is a reincarnation process. As you guys know, I'm not a believer of the white light soul trap. I think you should be suspicious of people who tell you these things. If people are telling you that don't go into the white light, that it's a trap, I don't fucking trust them. People who say there's installations, no, I'm sorry. I think at best, this is a misperception of something, because I have read like 15 Dolores books. I've read all Dr. Michael Newton's books. Those are thousands of case studies. I've gone under hypnosis. I've put other people under hypnosis, and I've heard hundreds of people's stories. Not one single person in hypnosis says, oh my God, it's a trap. Oh my God, they're recycling my soul. Oh my God, there's reptilians here taking my soul and forcing me into another life. Oh my God, I'm being recycled into this reincarnation white light soul trap. Never once. Why has that never come up? But the things that come up in these sessions come up, all different people from all different cultures, all throughout history. Sorry. Sounds like bullshit to me. And with that said, is there a soul trap? I don't believe in that regular soul trap that they talk about. I do think there is one way that it does happen. And Elizabeth April had talked about this like 3 or 4 years ago in one of her videos. And the way that she described it was very accurate, I believe. That it's not exactly that there's like a soul recycling, that reptilians are cycling our soul on planet Earth. What is happening is sometimes with our reincarnation process, we have to learn the lesson that we chose to learn. But then we might not be learning that lesson, so we need to try again. Sometimes we'll be incarnated to learn a lesson, and free will, either our own free will or someone else's free will change that course. And maybe, like, say someone could use their free will to cause trauma, to abuse someone, to inflict harm on someone. That is, you know, part of the free will process too. So we have this destiny versus the free will. Both are happening simultaneously, and either could take the wheel at any time. So sometimes there'll be people who were abused, and now it has caused almost like a spot on their soul. I'm not saying it's actually that, but let's just use that as an example. It creates like a trauma, a little spot on their soul, a little imperfection that, and of course we're fine, but sometimes things are very traumatic that it actually does go to the soul level. A lot of times we're fine when we leave the body, and because we don't have as much connection to the stuff, but then sometimes we leave and some people are still traumatized by what happened. It's not all just always happy-go-lucky. You know, that's one of the things that kind of is more nuanced with the situation. And sexual abuse, especially to children, especially in these ritualistic settings that we knew happened way in the past with like royal families and stuff, because there's how many things about people wanting children and virgins and stuff like that. So we already knew stuff like that had happened in the past. What happens though is that person becomes karmically intertwined with the person maybe who did this to them. And not saying this is all the time, 100%. This is one example, and it could happen many different ways. So if you are someone who is a victim of something, don't worry feeling like you're intertwined with that person forever. Don't go that far. Don't make assumptions about what I'm saying to your own situation. And this is so important when you're talking about the conspiracy stuff, because this is, if you're in that space of this is what you believe and now it got expanded, you're in a state of ungroundedness. It's not good to be projecting these theories onto yourself. So don't do that. Let's just use this as a hypothetical example of someone separate from us. So let's say this person was abused in these sodomy rituals as a rite of passage. And we already know, look at the Roman Empire. All these guys talk about the Roman Empire. Yeah, they were obsessed with raping little boys. Figures. Ugh. So I know everybody acts like it was like wonderful, great thing. It's like, okay, yeah, that people who literally like their whole freaking culture was based on like, if you have sex with a woman, it makes your life shorter. So that's why you have sex with pubescent boys. Okay. This ritual, we already can see it going back how long into history, always connected with power. And so say someone is traumatized by one of these things, and then they have this karmic tie to that person. Now coming back, they might want to fix it or learn that lesson. So they might incarnate into a situation that is similar. They might experience it again in this life so that this tie can be fixed, maybe for it to work out differently. So this is the one exception to something of being a soul trap that I would somewhat agree with. That it's not that the soul trap is this thing that people talk about, that it's like, oh, a net outside of the planet and it catches your soul and recycles you. I just really don't believe that. However, you can be stuck in a karmic cycle and reincarnating into the same situation again and again because you're really desperately trying to get out of this and learn it. So some of these people who are being born maybe into some of these things that could potentially happen in Hollywood, they might be people who have these soul karmic ties to these abusers, or may have been the abusers or whatever for maybe hundreds of lifetimes. That's where there could be a little bit of a soul trap, and where it could be some type of soul manipulation, where there could be certain groups of people, maybe some they say it's reptilian, but it might be people who just are a part of this web of this energy who maybe specifically do this. So these souls keep coming back, and that they keep being intertwined with these souls for many lifetimes. I know we've gone a little off the rails there, but you know, this was going to be the weird, crazy stuff that we're talking about today. So let's see. That gets very tied to the adrenochrome thing, right? So we already know that there was the drinking virgin's blood and all of that vampire stuff. And we know that Dracula is based off of Vlad the Impaler. And we know Vlad the Impaler was from a royal family. Dracula is coming from Draconian. Draconian is where allegedly these reptilians are from. So this whole history of vampires, dragons, has always been connected to royalty, right? We've heard forever these weird stories about blue blood. They don't want to mix with other people's blood and all of that stuff. So what is this adrenochrome thing? Is this an updated version of this thing that has been happening that is called vampires, right? Or is it something physical? Is it physically blood? Now, the first time that I ever heard about adrenochrome was in the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas book, which I read in the ninth grade when I was a freshman in high school. Read Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. He drinks the adrenochrome, and then that's when he has that whole I want you to throw the radio into the tub, White Rabbit, Psychosis moment where he tries to get Benicio del Toro to kill him. Yeah, it's in the movie and in the book. So in the movie, I didn't pick up the thing was called adrenochrome. But when I read the book, I was like, oh, very interesting. So that I never heard that word again until I got into conspiracy stuff. And then even to when the QAnon stuff started, which I was never into, but the QAnon stuff started coming together, then that's when the adrenochrome stuff came up, which is so interesting because then that's connected to Hunter S. Thompson. This weird Hunter S. Thompson connection is in one of his books, one of the lesser known books. I think it's one of the Generation books that he wrote. He has a line in that book that says, in Palm Beach, where they give people teenage girls as Christmas gifts. Palm Beach is literally where Epstein was doing all this shit. There's literally it's from I think the 80s or 90s, and I can't remember which book it is, where he talks about just one line, and I only knew it after the Epstein stuff, that I was like, oh my God, he literally was talking about people selling teenage girls in Palm Beach and giving people teenage girls as gifts for Christmas. Crazy. And there's another weird connection with Hunter S. Thompson. So when I did the JonBenét stuff, my JonBenét breakdown, there's a woman, Nancy Kreb. Nancy Kreb came out in the beginning of this stuff and said that the neighbors, the friends, the whites, Fleet White, she claims, allegedly, that he abused her when she was a child around Christmas, that it was the same thing they did to JonBenét, and that this was some type of ritual that was in the family, that there was some type of sexual abuse of children that would happen around Christmas every year. What's so interesting is she talks about, I believe, I might be misremembering, but she talks about that the person who was filming these videos of her as a child, these CP videos of her as a child, was called Uncle Hunter. And people always speculated if it was because there was some stuff where Hunter S. Thompson would kind of joke about snuff films and making snuff films and stuff. So I don't know. Obviously he was an iconic writer and journalist, but lifestyles of the rich and famous, right? And who knows, he had access to everything and everyone. So, was he partaking in things? Obviously he was also such a alcoholic and drug user, like many of these people are. And it's so easy to make horrible decisions in that situation. Let's see if there is anything else that I wanted to say about this. Yeah, we went way over. I did 2 hours today, but yeah. Anita said, unfortunately, especially with the painfully hacked police investigation and lack of discernment on obvious flaws and cracks in the JonBenét case. Yeah, I mean, it's so complicated personally, based on all of the information that I looked into. To me, it seems very obvious that this was a ritual. There's a guy on YouTube who worked in a neighboring town. He was a detective in the next town outside of Boulder. And he said that someone called one night and said that it was a ritual, and that the girl died, and that she wasn't supposed to die, and that it was just supposed to be, sexual. It wasn't supposed to be death. And this guy claims that he got that call at the time, and that he passed on the information to the guy that was the main investigator. The main investigator, who became, his name was Lou something, became completely tainted because he became so close with the Ramseys and then started going to church with them. So then he could not realistically look at the case. All right. Well, this was a very interesting, different type of Tuesday Night Live today. Just skimming through the comments here, see if there was any questions. Yeah, karmic repetition is just like trauma programming, repetition cycles. Yep, so true. Ah, yes, the Disney tales about evil queens stealing pure princess youth. You're so right. All of these fairy tales are about harnessing this virginal, pure, childlike energy. And what's so interesting, one last thing, this is what Sloan Bella, like I said, she articulated it so well. These are the things that we all look into, but maybe because she channeled it, which is why it came out so articulate, where she said that, let's say, for example, when they take advantage of one of these people, they take advantage of a young up and coming musician who's a teenager, and they do, say, spend a week at Diddy camp to learn the lifestyle, and then they're sexually assaulted there. Now, she says, and this was such a great way of putting it, because what we know that there's the concept of loosh. We know this concept of, like, there's a harnessing of energy, there's feeding of energy. How does this happen? How is this working? We already know, like, energy vampires, we can feel that regular people are able to feed on our energy. And the reason for that, sometimes, like, we'll use narcissist as an example, because this was how I learned it. But energy vampire is similar to a narcissist, right? So let's say, like, an energy vampire and then an empath, or a narcissist and an empath. The energy vampire is cut off from source. It is not able to get life force energy from God, from energy, from source, from oneness, from the universe. It's cut off because it's cut itself off through its own trauma and its own stuff. And that trauma personality has taken over, and now it's cut from God. And so they're not able to regenerate with that energy that people are getting from God. When they sleep, they recharge on it. And then you have an empath who is willing to self-sacrifice, or even like the people pleasing that we talked about, willing to self-sacrifice for someone else. So when this energy vampire cannot get energy from God, it cannot get energy from source, that's why it must take it from somewhere else. And the empath is willing to sacrifice that. So that's how they suck the energy from other people, because they can't get it from source. Now, what Sloan Bella was talking about was that when they do this ritual on someone, it just breaks them. Obviously, any of us who have experienced abuse or any type of violation, especially any type of sexual violation, it really, even in the moment, sometimes in the moment, you don't even realize, you just go about your life. And then years later, you start to realize, oh my God, I've been literally coping with something that I haven't even acknowledged. But what she says is that pure energy, this like sacrificing a virgin thing concept, is this pure energy, this pure creative energy. This is like pure talent. This is like Justin Bieber wants to be a star, and is like, that's like that pure value, high energy. She says that basically when they perform this abuse ritual, they can almost then, that person has been broken. The pureness of them has been broken. And part of that energy now can be almost worn as a mask by these people. And I was like, fuck, this is what the web is. When I went under hypnosis and it was saying that the guy I dated was not a reptilian or connected to reptilians, that it's a web and he is in this web. It just became more clear to me with all the Diddy stuff, because I'm like, oh, the web is this. Someone did it to Diddy. This is how Diddy got through. As that coping mechanism, you're either going to let it break you or you're going to strive. You're going to push through. This is like what happens in any traumatic experience. The person might collapse right away, which is the way we think people should handle it, which is why when rape victims and stuff come forward, people don't like how it looks, because in their mind, they think that you crumble. But actually what happens to more people is that they just go on. They go on with their life. And they don't realize in these other ways, they start to justify things. They start to shut themselves down. They start to close off thoughts. They disassociate. They become more ruthless. They start to lose compassion. That's how it happens over time like that. So this is how it's like a web. Say something happened to Diddy when he was young, some probably fucking executive, because the executives are worse than anybody. These people who are behind the scenes are a million times worse than the R. Kellys, than the Diddys, than all of these people. The people who are behind are the worst. And so some of these people probably did this to someone like a Diddy. Diddy is like, oh, okay, well, this is just how it is. This is just how you get. And then you get all of that negative reinforcement, that toxic validation. You get the money, the riches, the person. And like, then you kind of are empty. That part of yourself is missing now. That innocence is now missing. It's been broken. It's been stolen. It's been taken from you. Someone else is able to harness that energy from you now. So then you must find it in another person, a young up and coming talent. And then that talent grows up and that talent decides, do I want to go to the next level of my career and do this to someone, or do I not? And most of these people, because it's been so beneficial for them, like say someone who was like in a organized marriage, an arranged marriage, that's super fucking traumatic to meet your husband on that day. But the people that are in that, it works for them in their mind. So they usually justify that it's great. So they're like, oh no, my children should also do it, because they haven't even accepted the trauma of what the fuck they are still dealing with, and that they haven't even decompressed it yet. So sometimes when you have trauma that you haven't decompressed, you can actually become misery loves company in a way, where you can kind of recruit people to do the thing that you're doing to cope because you actually think you're doing the right thing. Oh, thank you so much, Anita. Oh, looking forward to the Nikki and Jim podcast interview. Did it come out already? Did it come out today? I haven't seen it yet. So with that, this is why I think it becomes a web, is that then this person becomes in, and then they basically make the choice of, oh, okay, well, now I don't have this innocence. This is why Michael Jackson, who had a broken childhood, was trying to get kids to sleep in his freaking bed, because literally that is how it works, is the innocence has been stolen and they're trying to find it now. So maybe they're trying to find it out of desperation. Maybe they're trying to find it out of that mask is no longer strong. You know, what Sloan said, which was interesting, is she says, when someone makes $900 million, it's not because of how talented they are. It's not because, you know, this, you know, pop star is all that and a bag of chips. No, it's because, according to her, it's the harvesting of this energy, the most pure, valuable energy on earth being harvested and worn as almost a mask or a shield. That's why people can look at, like, you know, I'm not going to accuse anyone specifically, but say something like a Taylor Swift situation, the idol worship for the most basic artist I have ever seen in my life. I am so sorry if there's any Swifties out there. I've never seen something more basic. I think a pumpkin spice latte is so much more spicy than anything Taylor Swift has to offer. So I'm not saying any of these people, I'm not accusing anyone of anything. However, this idol worship of this, like where they really act like this is like God or a goddess or something, like So when she says those things that people, now I've always believed in this stuff, but the way that she has explained that, and of course it's not all celebrities, like it's the level of like billions of dollars. Like obviously there's so many celebrities that are just regular people who are not like Illuminati, they're not doing any rituals, they're not sacrificing anyone. Majority of celebrities, I think, are not. I think really when we're talking about if this is happening, it is happening at the highest of 0.0001% level. When people are, you know, making hundreds of millions of dollars a year, but don't make any music or anything like that, like, you know, and you're like, how are they still making all this money? That's what I think is, but I also, like I said, I think these are interpretations. We use the word reptilian, we use sacrifice, we use these things, but really are those things kind of something that's happening inside of the person? Swift got no spice. The theme of vampirism is popular in K-pop. It's interesting to observe. Oh, interesting. And I think, you know, the K-pop thing, it seems like they're mirroring, oh, she has Ice Spice. They're mirroring a lot of the old 90s pop star, boy band, girl band stuff. The amount of people that would enlist if Taylor Swift said for them to. For real. For real. It's so bizarre to me. I do like some celebrities, you know, I like normal celebrities, to be honest with you, like just regular people. These like kind of super iconic people. I did love Madonna growing up. But you know, aside from that, I'm not like super into anyone. Yeah. Appreciate and show recognition for talent and gifts, but not to be to the level of idol worship. I agree. And to be honest, Taylor Swift's not that talented like that to me. Like, I mean, when I see Beyonce, I'm like, that's undeniable that she's talented, even though I'm not really a fan, you know? Christina Aguilera, like, I mean, there's a lot of people like that I'm like not necessarily a fan, but I mean, I acknowledge their talent. With the Taylor Swift thing, I'm like, brainwashing. This could only be masking and brainwashing and harvesting of energy, because there's like no way that it's anything else. Could I link her video? Oh, well, Sloan Bella, you have to go on her page because she has so many videos. So if you're going to watch them, she has 3 videos on Kim Porter, who is Diddy's ex-wife. So watch those 3 videos. You'll see she gives the exact same dates. 9 months ago, one came out. She gave the exact dates that Cassie would come forward and the exact weekend that he would go get raided. But she didn't know exactly what was going to happen on those dates. So watch those 3 Kim Porter, Diddy channeled videos. She did an Aaliyah channeled video. She did a Biggie channeled video. Those are the ones that I've watched so far. And so much of it like confirmed a lot of this stuff. And since everybody's talking about this stuff now, I figured I would give my take on it, which is there is not some dark evil force. I do think a lot of this is just like wounds and karma playing again and again. Yet wondering what her soul contract looks like. I know. So that's the thing too, is that celebrities have a soul contract with everyone that is also their fans. So like it's a minor part of the contract. It's not huge because obviously, you know, someone like Taylor Swift has how many millions of fans. But there is this little element of a contract. So what do you think will happen to Diddy? Personally, I think he'll probably get away with it legally, like many people do, and there will be like nothing to really prove, and there'll be hush money and silenced. And there's also clearly a web far beyond him that people don't want to be exposed, because it's not like this is all Diddy, you know? So I personally think legally he probably might not ever go down, but the court of public opinion has already made their decision on this, which is bad enough, right? So like, even if there's not legal justice, and when I watched the Harvey trial, sitting there every day, listening to these rape victims talk about their story, I was like, you know, legal justice, I don't think is the way either. Because the legal system is such masculine. It is like the emperor card. It is the justice card. You know, it is like that type of energy. But when we're talking about consent, taking advantage of people, power play, rites of passage, potential rituals, things like that, this is all not clear cut, straight, black and white, cut and dry stuff. So to put those things, even just something without all the conspiracy side, just the plain facts that we know of these interactions that happened that were not consensual. One person believed it was consensual, one person believed it wasn't. However, with that alone, it's so nuanced that like in the court of law, I feel like that's not really the right place for that, you know? Oh, thanks, Poodle. Merge me back with my soul